All right, well, I think the time has come for us to kick off this morning's webinar. Good morning, perhaps good afternoon to some of you, and a very warm welcome to our webinar today on outreach strategies and how to bring financial education to our target groups. I am Sophie Evans, and I am a member of the International Labour Organization's social finance team, and I'm joined here today by my colleague Inez Benchiku and Yusra Hamed. We form part of the financial education team, and we're on the webinar today hosting this webinar. Like I say, between the three of us, we're responsible for the ILO's global program on financial education, and a part of our work involves the training and certification of individuals who want to become financial education trainers in their respective countries. And that's exactly what our two fabulous panelists have done. They are financial education trainers certified by the ILO, one based in Zimbabwe and one based in Nigeria. Now, before I hand over the conversation to our panelists and ask them to introduce themselves, I just have two very quick housekeeping points. Firstly, if you caught me earlier, please pop your questions in the question and answer chat. We will come back to those at the end of the conversation, should we have time. And a second point is, if you're interested in the topic of financial education and how it's driving the ILO mandate on social justice, please join us for another separate webinar next Thursday in the afternoon, 3 p.m. Swiss time. It will be hosted by my colleague Yusra, and it's going to be really, really great and insightful. Again, it's pairing financial education with social justice. So we will pop the link to register for that in the chat as well. Okay, enough from me. Without further ado, it gives me really great pleasure to introduce you to our two panelists today, Omokorede Fasoro and Shalom, Govero. And I will ask each of them to give them a brief introduction to you, the audience, today before we get into our conversation. So Shalom, if I could hand over to you first, please do introduce yourself to our audience today.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Shalom Govero, as has already been said. I am a trainer, I am a speaker, a radio co-host with a passion really to bring financial conversations to the kitchen table, to make it easier for the people that are within my context to talk to their closest ones about money. That's one of my biggest passions. And as has already been said again, I'm a certified national trainer for the ILO Financial Education for Workers in Africa package. And I have been training that for the past 7 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shalom. So great to hear. You can just hear the passion in your voice as you're speaking about that. So that's so good. Now over to Omokorede. Again, if you could just briefly introduce yourself to our audience today.
Good morning, everyone. As Sophie said, my name is Omokorede Fasoro, and I'm joining in from outskirts of Lagos in Nigeria. I'm a certified trainer with the ILO, a national consultant also on the financial education package. I'm also certified in a package called Gender and Enterprise Together that focuses on empowerment of women. I also run an NGO called Women of Essence Foundation, and that was about 10 years ago, and where we have the mandate to educate and empower women and girls with the right kind of information that can help them discover purpose and be positive change agents. And part of what we use in empowering them is the subject of financial education, because I believe that a woman who has a level of financial literacy and independence will be an asset to our society. Thank you. It's great to be here with you all.
Thank you so much, Omokorede. I've just realized that all of us on the camera today are actually women. So it's so nice that you're bringing that gender aspect to the fore today, where we're absolutely 100% behind you on that. So let's get into the conversation. What I'd like to ask you both first off this morning is how, in fact, you first became involved with the ILO's global program on financial education. I'd love to hear from you both, perhaps what were your motivations for wanting to go through this process? Because it's not an easy process. It involves a lot of time and dedication to becoming a trainer, a certified trainer with us. So what were your motivations for wanting to do that? And also, had you already had any previous experience in financial education, or had you been training in that field before, or was this completely new to you? So if I could maybe go first to Shalom, if you could answer those questions, we'd love to hear about your background and your introduction to this topic.
Thank you so much. So I've got, it's not a very linear story, but for me, I mean, I had been introduced to financial education under Microfinance Opportunities, a package which was particularly for young people back in 2015. And I really enjoyed that because also, you know, being young, I really connected with the content and I enjoyed sort of training high schoolers and teenagers. And then in 2016, there was a training of trainers under the ILO for the Financial Education for Workers in Africa package. And my boss at the time was going to be running that workshop as the master trainer. I asked to tag along and I said, can I please be involved in this? Because I think this would open up for me sort of a bigger target market. You know, it would mean I could then now train professionals, I could train entrepreneurs, couples in financial education, and not just focus on, you know, the young demographic. Although I loved it, I also felt that it would have been a great opportunity for me to get a tool that would help me serve sort of a bigger market. And because I've always loved training, I think also generally being a speaker, somebody who loves to articulate and talk, I also quite enjoyed how simplified the content was. So that's how I got involved with the program. And then that's also how I then sort of followed on to make sure that I start to use the program, as it were.
Fantastic. So interesting. So you really are covering a whole, different groups of people that you're managing to train through this program. You started with young people, and then you've managed to branch out from there using our training resources that you've been certified in.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Yes, that's
Great.
it.
Right, Omokorede, again, the same question to you. What motivated you to want to join our program, become certified? And did you have any background in financial education before that, or this was the first opportunity for you to tackle this subject and bring it to your community?
Okay, thank you, Sophie. Actually, about 15 years ago, that was the first time I got exposed to one of the ILO packages called Start Your Business. So I was trained as a trainer, and I've been doing that over the years, helping aspiring entrepreneurs to start and run businesses. And then later on in 2018, thereabout, I got to hear about the Gender and Enterprise Program. I had the opportunity to be a touring for that training. And not long after, but I discovered a gap in the training of entrepreneurs. That is one thing to train people how to start businesses, how to run businesses, but there's a gap in the financial education aspect, how to manage their personal finances and also their business finances correctly. And so when I got to hear about this financial education program being offered by the ILO, that caught my attention because I felt that would help deepen my knowledge and skills and capacity in that area. So the year after, I was back in Turin for the training of trainers. And a year after that, I got certified, and that's what we've been doing since. So it's kind of packaged with what I do, helping entrepreneurs and also women. Right.
Yeah, great. Again, great that you mentioned entrepreneurs, a huge target group of ours here at the ILO. And like you say, starting a business is one thing, and they need a lot of help and support with that, which we provide. But like you say, it's also the personal finances and the business finances together that they also, in many cases, need some support with. So that's great that our program also allows you to target that audience and bring this really, really important education to those people in your community as well. So yeah, entrepreneurs, women, young people, we can see it's really applicable across all different demographics in both of your situations. So thank you so much for highlighting that. So next, what I would really like to hear about today, and it really is the focus of our conversation, is since you've been through our training process and you've become certified with the ILO as financial trainers in your respective countries, could you tell us more about the work that you are carrying out today? You've shared your background and how you become involved in the ILO's program. But now what we'd like to hear about is the work that you're doing today in your respective countries with regards to financial education, and how specifically you are reaching out into these communities and these target groups that you've been talking about. And perhaps you could also share with us why you've chosen these particular strategies, because I know both of you have some overlapping strategies, some very different strategies, and perhaps it has something to do with where you're based. Like we've also introduced, Shalom is in Zimbabwe, Omokorede is in Nigeria. So Shalom, maybe I could start with you. Could you tell us the work that you're really involved with at the moment, what your everyday sort of day looks like, and those sort of outreach strategies that you're using in particular in Zimbabwe to engage with these different types of target groups in your community?
Excellent. I see Inez has put up the slide as well that will help me as I talk through this. So let me just also begin by saying our context in Zimbabwe is very dynamic. We have a history of structural economic challenges. So many conversations can be complex and even political. So to make it easier for us as financial educators to teach and reach the masses, we realized we needed to find a way to get through to people. And one of those ways was radio. And I think that's the first thing that will come up on the slide, which is, taking just the normal radio show program, but then we take the financial education messages and we package them in a very sort of 20 to 30 minutes talk show. And it's very lighthearted. We're talking about it from a perspective of just trying to make light of the conversation. Sort of, what I mentioned at the very beginning, we're bringing the money conversation to the kitchen table. We're making it easier for people to talk about things that are not easy to talk about generally. We take viral stories, some which are just circulating on social media or in newspapers, on tabloids, and then we sort of use those as jump-off points to then talk about various financial literacy messages of principles such as budgeting, talk about, borrowing well, fraud, insurance, banking. We delve into all of that. And we've really made sure that we capture the masses. So I'm on 2 radio programs, one which targets mostly the urban listener, which is the young, professional, most of them are formally employed. And then we also have one which is really in vernacular languages, Shona and Ndebele, and it's focusing on the rural and the sort of people that are within the markets, they're informally employed, and we're really talking about all things money. And what we've used that for is to help us to sort of show people their need for financial education. So radio is not really the end goal. We then move the people that we've reached on radio to the next part, which is social media. For us here in Zimbabwe, we often joke that our internet is WhatsApp. The bulk of internet conversations or digital conversations are happening on WhatsApp. So we've actually taken that a step further. We run WhatsApp classes. There's a little organization I formed called the Finance Wiz. And literally, I run sort of, financial education courses, 4 classes that you can do on WhatsApp, and you do discussions on WhatsApp, and you really get to talk to people and take them through the same content, but we've now put it onto a WhatsApp-based platform. And then the other one would be taking them to the Facebook page, but on the Facebook page, it leads them to the classroom training. So that's the last piece of the sort of the, what do we call it? The train or the channels that we're using. Maybe you can press the next one. Yeah, so that's the classroom training where we really can go, dig deeper, do the actual activities that are in the financial education for workers in Africa package, take them into the worksheets. They actually do an actual budget. It's almost saying, yes, you may have heard me speak about this on radio, but I want you to actually take the tool and use it. So we really are seeing the power also of digital platforms. I wanted to highlight that mostly because for the WhatsApp classes and the Zoom, we've also done quite a number of Zoom classes. We've reached about 5,000, and these are easy for me to collect as well because I actually have groups. So we've reached about 5,000 participants doing the WhatsApp classes and the Zoom presentation. So that's been very, very dynamic for us to use that in terms of trying to reach people with, good financial education messages. And I think the reason why radio has worked so well for us as well is because this is the power of storytelling. When you're able to say, it's not just a financial principle, but it's actually realistic. It's relevant, it can fit in your life. This is how you can do it in your own life. And that's what has actually helped us to connect with people and help them to actually take up the training courses.
Oh, that's so interesting to hear you speak about those different stages in your sort of rollout strategy, if you like, starting with the radio, not as the end goal, but leading them down a sort of path to the end goal, like you say, not just listening to somebody talking about it, but actually getting them involved, getting them into the classroom and putting this stuff into practice. Because like we all know, knowing is one thing, but doing is a completely other thing. And for us, it's very important that these trainings that we put out and you help us to disseminate within your communities actually has a positive impact on people's behaviors at the end of the day. And also, I like the way that you're talking about storytelling. People can relate to what you're talking to. It's not an abstract concept anymore. They can really see how it impacts their everyday life. And just having the conversation in the first place, like you say, it's not easy for many of us, wherever we are, to talk about money with our nearest and dearest and bring it to the kitchen table and trying to normalize the conversation in that way. It's just so inspiring to hear you talk about that. And I'm sure lots of people are thinking about, their own sort of thoughts and behaviors around money and how having this kind of conversation with people can really help move them forward. So thank you so much for sharing that. It's really, really inspiring to hear about that. Right, Omokorede, it's the same question I'd like to pose to you, but if you could tell us in a bit more detail about the work that you're involved in right now, since becoming a certified trainer, what you're doing in Nigeria, and how in particular you're reaching out to the people in your community who you're engaging with. And maybe you can also share why you've chosen those strategies, why they're particularly relevant, but perhaps to Nigeria and your target group.
Okay, thank you, Sophie. I don't know if Ines could help me with my slide. Okay, so the first level, there are actually like 4 levels. The first is to create the awareness. Sometimes last week, we had an online program, a webinar, using it to kind of mark the Financial Literacy Week, creating the awareness to women, telling them the need for them to be financially literate, the kind of skills they need, the tools they need, so the awareness, and then the training, in-person training. But about 2 years ago, as we all know, COVID struck. There was a project, an ILO project I was involved in called Initiative for Labor Migration and Employment and Reintegration of Returnees, ILMA in short form. And at that time when we were working on the project was at the peak of COVID. We were meant to have face-to-face in-person trainings, but then we immediately had to be innovative and then we went online. So that was how taking the message online was birthed. Okay, through Zoom has been very useful. The advantage is that it gives the people the opportunity to reach out from as you know, Nigeria is a massive country, over 200 million people, wide with different categories of people. And so going online gave the opportunity for a wider reach. So we've had women or people joining from everywhere across the country, even some from overseas joining in to be a part. So like I said, the first part was in person, but more of what we've been doing has been virtual. Now, we know we've had challenges, like Sophie also, Ms. Shalom also mentioned. Part of the challenge we have is in data, the internet connectivity, I mean, as I'm speaking now, I'm just saying a prayer in my heart that the internet does not play up. I'm sure Shalom understands what I'm talking about. You know, so what we have done is that apart from the Zoom, reaching out on Zoom, we have also incorporated the use of WhatsApp, because WhatsApp is quite friendly on the internet consumption and on data. So that gives another layer for us to continue to engage with them. Now, what we've been able to do is to direct them to the online version of the financial education course that the ILO developed. Okay, so what we do is we direct them there. They take maybe the first lesson, and then we come back online to meet, okay, like a kind of coaching session after each module. And then we direct them back to the online course, because I didn't believe in, you know, reinventing the wheel all over again, since it's a good job that ILO had done. And so we meet back online again, and then, you know, follow up with a coaching session, and then it goes on like that. And then the WhatsApp helps us to continue to engage. For instance, through WhatsApp, we're able to share resources, share articles, sometimes short videos that can help to deepen the information that we've passed across. So I've also discovered that Telegram is also a very good one. Lately on Telegram, I've been able to start a channel where you can drop videos and you can always go back to continue to watch what has been shared with them. So basically, we're just trying to look for ways. Yes, okay, other engagement tools, Telegram is good, LinkedIn to share message. Of course, I've talked about WhatsApp, and then email messages. So we just try to have a potpourri of different kinds of tools based on the challenges we have, especially in the area of internet connectivity. So we use all of these together to kind of reinforce the message that we have for them. Thank you.
Oh, that's so interesting as well. And I like the way that you're really using all these different channels really to try and maximize your outreach, because I think especially for, I don't know, us sitting away from Zimbabwe and Nigeria, I mean, me and Inez and Yusra, we're sitting in Geneva. We don't experience the same kind of challenges perhaps that you do with regards to the internet connectivity. And it's always good for us to bear in mind that not everybody's in the same situation, and data obviously has a big impact on people. So we need to be mindful of how we are reaching out. And it's so great to see you being so inventive and really covering the gamut of the different ways that you're reaching out. Thank you, Omokorede, as well, for mentioning the ILO's e-learning course. This is something that we're super proud of here at the ILO. It's accessible to everybody, free of charge. And I think if we can post in the chat a link to that course in a minute, it might be of interest to other people. Like you say, it's very informative. It's available in several different languages. So if anybody would like to use this resource that Omokorede has already mentioned, is really, really useful for giving you that grounding in financial education that we can really never have enough of. So that is available to you all. And like Omokorede said, we're not inventing the wheel here. These are the basics of financial education, really applicable to so many different people and available in different languages through our website. So that's so great to hear about these different initiatives: radio, Telegram that I'd never heard of, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, the internet of Zimbabwe, so great. And also we bear in mind the size of the countries where you're working and how these digital interactions, like you say, can really, really reach out to a wide population. So thank you so much for sharing that. If we could now move on as we come towards the end of our webinar, just to sort of look to the future now. And Omokorede had already just sort of touched on this a little bit, but finally, what we'd like to hear from you both is what the future really holds. What do you see on the horizon with regards to financial education in your countries? And maybe specifically you could share with us why you believe training others to become financially literate is so important considering your country context. We've heard a little bit about that already, but what going forwards will you personally be focusing your efforts on, and why? And if I can ask Omokorede maybe to respond to that first. I think the slide that she had up last may also be relevant to that,
Yes.
but just a couple of minutes on looking to the future, if you would.
Okay. All right. Thanks once again, Sophie. So like it says on the slide, the right-hand side of the slide, in Nigeria, like I said, we have a population of over 200 million. And about over 30% of the population are still illiterate, might not have access to the internet. And so I've been, thinking with the idea of taking the message, having the message in the form of short videos in local languages. We have 3 major languages in Nigeria, the Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa, and of course, Pidgin, which most people would understand. So having short videos that people can be shared on WhatsApp, that they can watch, listen to, where the core message of saving, of budgeting, the need for insurance, the core message of the financial education package can be taught in the local language, so that the common man, the local man in the village that has a phone, because at least 50% of Nigerians have phones, the way we are now. So they can watch, and then they can get the message being spoken to them or being preached to them in a language that they can understand. So that's something that is in the pipeline. And also being a mother of children, I've noticed that because of the way our curriculum is, it's sad to say, we don't really have financial education as part of what we are taught in school. You just go to university to graduate, get a degree, to go and work somewhere. And I've seen that gap in the life of my children, that even now as adults, there are basic things I have to teach them. And then I'm thinking, okay, why don't we also take this message to that level? So I'm also looking at the idea of having maybe storybooks, short storybooks, animated storybooks for children, where, because I also like to write, I'm also an author, where the message of financial education, it could be in series, can be shared in a way that they can easily grasp and, deepen their knowledge, and then become financially literate individuals, and by extension, financially independent people. So those are the things I'm looking at, apart from the training that will still continue. But those 2 big projects are the things on my mind at this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As a mother of 2 myself, this message really resonates with me. Young people, the sooner they can start to have some basic grasp of these fundamental concepts, like you say, if it's written in an age-appropriate manner, there's no reason why we can't start teaching our young people about these such important life skills from an early age. So I wish you all the very best with that. Please keep us posted on anything that you produce for children. We're always interested, as you know, to know what you're up to. So such great ideas, and also we'd love to hear maybe later on about your book. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, if I could move to Shalom and also just ask you what the future holds for you, what if you have any upcoming projects, who you're going to be focusing on in the upcoming years with regards to your training of financial education.
Thank you. So I think on the slide that should be coming up, I just put up something that I worked on 3 years back. I packaged my experience with financial education into a little book called The Personal Finance Game Plan. I wrote it particularly for under 30 or under 35, as we like to say it, young people who are starting off their financial journeys, starting families, starting careers, and really trying to understand basic financial concepts. And I've since sold about 1,500 copies, and I thought, this is telling me something. And one of the things that I have noticed is that storytelling is such an incredible, powerful way, of increasing the relevance of financial education messages in our context, particularly. So in the near future, I want to write more. In fact, I'm actually writing my second book, which should be out before the end of the year. And it's really focusing on family finance. I think with my experience working amongst young people, I've noticed that, a lot of the times you're teaching young people these principles, and because they're not being reinforced in the home, then it becomes problematic, because it's like you're teaching them in a vacuum. There's nothing more happening besides what you've taught them in a classroom setup during your life skills or financial education presentation that you've done during Global Money Week or something like that, like once a year. So I felt that it's so important for us to be able to to take financial education into the home, and written literature can help us to do that. So to really help people to have, simplified written literature that is, sort of contextualized to our Zimbabwean experience. We do have a lot of people in Zimbabwe who have read financial education books, but then they're not, within our context. And our context is very, very different from a lot, even here in Africa. Someone who's living in South Africa and someone who's living just next door in Zimbabwe, we have very different experiences with their money. So I really truly believe that storytelling can really help us. So that's why I'm focusing a lot of my attention on writing. I have done a little bit of, school diaries for children. I am going to be exploring that a little bit more next year. I sort of packed that project for a bit when life was getting a bit hectic, but I really want to make sure that I sort of grow a sort of library of simplified, contextualized financial education books that we can read, that, because I've realized that also, when somebody takes those principles and applies them to their life and is able to share that I actually tried this and it worked for me, then it becomes sort of a testimony that helps the other person to say, I'm going to try it too. If it has worked for you, I am going to also try it. And that leads, to the behavior change that we're talking about, because that person then says, I also want to do the same and experience the same transformation that you had. And then also, I really think that with the work that I'm already doing in the youth space, I really want to also focus a lot of my energy in developing digital content. I haven't done too well with that. I've done a few, sort of YouTube tutorials, and everybody keeps saying we want more. So I really want to invest my time into that, looking in the near future, working with various partners that can really help me to disseminate sort of video, as mostly video content, because now, that's where a lot of our young people are skewing towards. So yeah, I hope to do more of that, but the book is definitely out this year. So I'm excited about that.
That is amazing. Thank you so much, Shalom, for sharing all these amazing projects that you've got on the horizon, and so excited to hear about this book launch. Please keep us posted when that comes out. Sounds amazing. And like you mentioned, it's so interesting for us to hear about the differences between the different countries in Africa, and that you're able to really tailor your content to your communities in Zimbabwe and Nigeria. That makes it so relevant, and through the stories that you're sharing, based in your country context, it makes it so much easier, I would imagine, for people to imagine themselves doing these different steps and really implementing the great work and the great advice and education that you're offering to them. And also, Omokorede, it's so nice to hear you talking about the audio messaging that you're contemplating putting out there in your local languages. Funnily enough, at the ILO, we also have been interested in this sort of digital audio messaging area, and we've done some pilot schemes in Mali, as well as some other places where we are using digital technology in that way, with audio messages focused on financial education, amongst other things. So yeah, it's so good, again, to just be thinking about how we can engage with as many people as possible and bring this really important message of how to budget your finances for personal and business means to everybody as best we can. And we're so grateful for all the work that you're doing out there, and for having shared these brilliant outreach strategies with us, such a plethora of different ideas. I know it will have inspired so many of our listeners today, and so many of our trainers who are going through this process that you've already been through to become certified national trainers. So thank you so very much for sharing your wisdom, your experiences, and your innovative outreach strategies with us this morning, this afternoon. It's been really great to have this conversation with you both. I shall pass over just quickly to my colleague Inez, just to see if we have had any conversations, any questions come up in the Q&A that we've got a few minutes now to address. So Inez, are there any questions for our panelists today?
Hi, first of all, thank you very much for this morning's conversation. It has been very, very informative. So thank you very much. And thank you, Sophie, for walking us through this wonderful conversation with our guests. So we do have a first question for Shalom today. from Valérie Bichelmaya. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, who says, my question as I listen to Shalom is, how is it all financed? And she says, apologies for this very down-to-earth questions because we were talking about money. So maybe over to you, Shalom, for responding to that question.
Yes, sure, I can do that. So initially, when we wanted to go to radio, we tried to speak to, some banks and financial institutions to see if they were interested in sponsoring a program. We hit a snag, and we decided to do a trial run for 10-week series that was sort of funded by the company that I was working for at that time, Mustard Seed Advisory. And I went in, did those 10 sessions being sponsored by the company. Then it was a few months down the line that the show that I'm on now, they reached out and actually said they had a segment that had already secured sponsorship from a local bank. So I went in to take up that slot. It had already found sponsorship from a local bank. And again, as I said, I'm on 2 radio platforms. The one that is focusing on rural and the masses, sort of the bigger reach, which is a state broadcaster, it's actually being sponsored by a microfinance institution that has particular focus on entrepreneurs. So they really want their entrepreneurs to be financially literate. So they came in with a real agenda. So they said, we'll sponsor you to go onto the show and be able to really talk about this. If people then want to reach out for further training, that's fine. But for them, their end goal is also for them to be able to get, financially literate people calling them to borrow from them. So that's their end goal. And then I think at some point I lost sponsorship for one of the programs. And I decided that I was going to fund that so that I would then lead people to training workshops. So I would, do the show and would get at least 10 people signing up for the online class. So at least that would cover my cost of actually going out to do the show. And that really helped me to keep the show going as well. So that's how I've been funding it. And then in terms of book writing, it's mostly self-funded. I hope that answers your question.
That's great. Thank you so much, Shalom. I think that answered the question very thoroughly. And it's nice to have a practical, down-to-earth question asking about finances when our topic is indeed financial education. So thank you, Valerie, for your question. I don't know if anyone else has got any questions. We were coming towards the end of our time this morning. If you have a question, please feel free to pop it into the Q&A chat box. Now is going to be your last chance to ask these 2 wonderful women any questions that you might have. Inez, I don't know if there's another question.
No, yeah, that's all I see for now.
Okay.
Simply maybe we can, I will tell you to, I will probably suggest to everybody to that is interested in financial education and in our program to register maybe to the mailing list, as there was a question from Chakunda Zikali, who is interested in becoming a national trainer in Algeria. So there is a way which is to follow our activities through our varied emails that you will receive only if you're registered to our mailing list. So I highly encourage you to register, and I will pop the link in the chat box.
Perfect. That was going to be my question. If you could do that, Inez, that would be great. Feel free to register for our newsletter, and then you won't miss out on any of these other engaging conversations that we've got coming up. So I will take this last moment to thank you so much, our 2 guests, Shalom and Omokorede, for sharing your stories with us today. It's super inspiring, as I've already said. I'll hand over to each of you in turn if you'd just like to say a few words in closing and maybe share with our audience how they can connect with you after the webinar on various social media channels if they should so wish. So Omokorede, over to you.
All right. I'd like to use this opportunity to thank you, Sophie and Inez and Yusra, for the opportunity to be here on this panel. And to the audience, I'd just like to say, please take your money matters seriously. Because if you do not take good care of your money, if you do not acquire the right kind of skills, the future might be very bleak, especially for those of us in the developing countries like where I come from. Have your money matters well planned. Pay attention to your financial literacy, acquire the right kind of skills, and then the future is always secure. So I can be reached on my LinkedIn. Just type my name, Omokorede Fasoro. That's my LinkedIn. Also on Facebook. I also have a website. Just type my name, Omokorede Fasoro, and then you'll get the link. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Omokorede. Now, Shalom, please.
Yes, so I am on many platforms, but Shalom Govero on LinkedIn. On Facebook, I would rather you go to the Finance Wiz, which is all one word, the Finance Wiz. And on Twitter, it's Shalom_MSA. And yeah, I am super excited about the future of financial literacy in our country. I believe that the ecosystem is growing and it's becoming stronger and more effective in terms of reaching people with, financial education messages that are truly transformative. I am excited to be part of what is happening in our country in terms of sort of rebuilding people's confidence in the financial services sector and what has really been happening in our country. There's been a lot going on, but I think we are part and parcel of rebuilding our country in terms of, financial literacy, as it were. So I'm excited about that. And I truly know that the bulk of us who are doing work in different places, we can really learn from that and be able to sort of contribute, because there's room for everyone to be able to pass on messages that are able to help people to make and manage their money well in the future.
Hear, hear. Such great words from both of you. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us this morning, everybody who's attended live. Thank you so much to Inez and Yusra from my team in Geneva for helping put all of this together. And we look forward to welcoming you to our next webinar, which is going to take place next Thursday, 3 p.m. on the topic of social justice and financial education. So please join us for that. In the meantime, I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you to everybody who's taken part today. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.